We're back with another installment of the world's worst job postings and application processes. And if you're new here, my name is Brian, and I'm a corporate recruiter and HR professional, and I've got 20 years of experience interviewing and hiring thousands of people into some of the world's biggest and most well-known companies. And occasionally, I like to look at it from the job seeker's perspective about what kind of candidate experience they are having with these job applications. The job market stinks, and some companies are not making it any better. So I like to take a kind of a lighthearted stab at some of these awful job postings that are out there and ridiculous requirements that employers have so that we can highlight it. And hopefully there'll be some companies that will see this, realize they're acting ridiculous, and then hopefully change the processes. So a little bit of a lighthearted poke at this. I don't take these very seriously, and they're just a bit of fun. So if this kind of content interests you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and check out the playlist. I've got a whole bunch of other previous installments of this series. So let's get in and check them out. All right, first up, we have this job posting. It says this posted range is for 40 hours per week. So I'm assuming this range right here is 40 hours per week, but the range, the pay range for this 10-hour per week position will be prorated. So I'm going to assume that that means that you're going to get 1/4 of this amount of money for this position. It's like literally like peanuts. But here's where it gets really interesting. It says pay. This position is funded through personal fundraising. What is that actually? Does that mean you actually have to go and fundraise your own income? If that was the case, you may as well just be in your own business. Well, why are you going to go fundraise your own meager, tiny little salary? But nonetheless, they expect you to raise your own salary through personal fundraising. So accordingly, compensation will vary on your ability for the individual to secure a donor team to fund the cost of his or her salary. You're literally paying yourself. The anticipated salary range for this position, they're giving you a range and then saying that you have to raise your own money. So what happens if you raise $100,000? Couldn't you pay yourself $100,000 if you're raising it yourself? But they're saying that the anticipated salary range for this position is dependent on a variety of factors, including location and cost of living. So if you raise more than the allotted amount, are they just taking it and pocketing it? So if you have a really good donor team, that's what I'm reading this or interpreting this as I'm reading it. It says the actual salary received, including any geographic adjustments for location and cost of living, is subject to the individual's ability to raise the funds necessary to cover the amount of salary within the range set forth by the job. I have never in my life heard of this. And I don't know if this is, I'm assuming this is like some sort of a not-for-profit type of thing. If you all have ever heard of this type of thing before, let me know. But I have never, ever heard of personal fundraising to pay myself. So that one's pretty unique and pretty bizarre. If you like fundraising your own money, I don't know why you're not just starting your own business and doing it yourself, but nonetheless, there's this job opportunity. Next up, we have everybody's favorite, these abstract reasoning questions. Now, this is through Carmax. So apparently they make you do one of these. It's like an IQ test. It's like usually these are timed and they want to see what your abstract reasoning ability is. And this, if we read through the description here, it says that after going through a 20-minute personality test, so you had to do a personality test to start with. You then get hit with this analytical test for a public relations job. Like, why are you having to do this for a PR job? I'm so tired of this. Hey, man, I would be totally tired of this too. And in fact, in most cases, me personally, if I'm applying for a job and I have to go through a bunch of personality tests just to apply, I almost always back out of the application because I've found that if these applications that load in personality tests and these assessments, they're requiring all candidates to go through it. And you have to think that they're probably only inviting in less than 5% of people for actual interviews. So they're basically wasting 95% of people's time for whatever these things are. He says he spent 20 minutes on a personality test. I don't know how long this one is. To say it's another 20-minute or 30-minute, you're almost investing an hour in a process that you're likely never going to hear back from them or just get an automatic rejection. So to me, if the job absolutely requires it, which I don't know why a PR test would, maybe personality test, I could maybe justify, but certainly not an abstract an abstract test here. We actually have to give the Wonderlic at one of my old companies, and we all hated it. The recruiting team hated it. We tried to get rid of it, but they made every single candidate, no matter what job you're in, go through the Wonderlic. If you've never done the Wonderlic, it's like an IQ test basically. And the thing is, the management team, this was the senior leadership team, somebody on that leadership team thought that the Wonderlic was the bee's knees, and we never would hire a candidate if you scored below a certain amount on the Wonderlic. And you could be the perfect candidate. You could be a rock star, have the perfect experience, but if you failed the Wonderlic even by a single point, it would go into a review panel or review committee. You had to get a special approval to make an exception. But in general, the Wonderlic was an absolute requirement. You had to score, I think, I don't remember what the scores were. I think off the top of my head, might have been like above 26. You had to score above a 26 on the Wonderlic, which was, the Wonderlic was not a particularly easy test when you would take it. It could be pretty intimidating, and we used to really warn candidates. But I hate these things. To me, they are not an indicator of on-job success. They are strictly there to just filter people out. And in this one, it says the endless games and humiliation rituals. Yeah, because this has nothing to do with your ability to do this job, in my opinion. And then you get the AI recruiter chat pops up. Passive aggressive interviews, walking into an inbox full of rejections every day. People are tired of this crap. And I get it. Like the average job seeker has to jump through hoop after hoop after hoop. All I'm going to say is determine how you want to spend your time. If you're applying for a bunch of these jobs, if I'm encountering this, I have to determine how badly do I want this job, and more importantly, how closely do I match the position, and how likely am I to get a phone call back? Because if you're doing this as a Hail Mary, you're just like, yeah, I'll throw a resume at something that you might not have a very good chance at getting a call back. You're going to invest a lot of time in these personality tests, et cetera, these assessments, and you're probably never going to get the return on investment. And if you are, like if we were to try to solve this sample reasoning question, well, I'm looking at this going at first glance, I'm like, what the hell? So if I was going to solve it, I see these two shapes here. I see this shape here. This has lines going in this direction. So logically, I'm going to say it's probably C. That's my guess. So what's your answer there? Is my logic off? I probably would not pass this test to get into Carmax because I don't think I'd be smart enough. But nonetheless, use your judgment wisely on those. All right. So next up, we have something kind of along the same lines of these annoying job application steps, where you are asked to create some sort of a project, whether it's a slide deck, a presentation, a sales pitch. I've actually had to do one where I had to build out a talent acquisition strategy for a company. In hindsight, and this is why I say I will never do these again. I got kind of duped into doing one because I thought I was the finalist, the number one finalist for a company. They were giving me all this feedback saying you're the best. Thought I had an offer coming, so I put a lot of work into an entire hiring presentation for a startup in the entertainment industry. It was like a technical, like a startup, but I put together this really impressive slide deck. I had it recorded. I made a video of it, all this stuff, and I don't even think they even barely looked at it. They didn't give me any feedback. I didn't present it to them. I just sent it in, and I just got great presentation. That was like literally all I got. And then a week later, they hired somebody else. So I've wasted all this freaking time doing it. I would really think twice about whether or not I would do one of those. Oh, and the worst part is it's going to be kind of similar to this. Let me circle back to that in a minute. But this says I got tricked into developing a full client website during an interview test, and found it live a week later. And he basically goes through this story about how he was working or interviewing for a small digital agency, and he got asked to complete some technical assessment, which is to build a functional landing page for one of their potential client in the tourism industry. And they provided all this information. So in other words, this is like a real problem that the businesses are trying to solve. They have a real business problem, and they're asking you to do an assessment. That's a huge red flag. If they ask you to solve a particular business problem that they're currently facing, whether it is like here, you got a client site that they're trying to build, and they ask you to do a mock-up of it, there's almost 100% chance that they're going to steal your work, and you have to be really, really careful there. But sure enough, this guy builds out this site, spent 3 days doing this responsive design, custom animations, booking form for integration, even added some accessibility features they didn't request. And their feedback was absolutely brilliant work, exactly what we're looking for. And then, of course, this is like so predictable. Radio silence for a week, no follow-ups. Literally, they ghosted him, and then a week later, this tourism company gets his new guy. I mean, for me, I would probably file a lawsuit and go after them for stealing my work. This was a bad one. And he reaches out to the agency, who has the nerve to say, the assessment materials clearly stated all submissions become company property. If you're seeing this stuff when you're going through the assessment process, the hiring process, and you see this dotted line, this small print stuff here that says this is like, should be a huge warning sign for you. I would absolutely just back it, especially, this is not all small companies, but a lot of these small companies will tend to do this kind of crap. You usually do not see this kind of stuff in much larger companies. You just don't. It's almost always exclusively with small companies, startups, and companies who don't value. There's no scruples here. He said he checked emails and nothing was ever mentioned, and he's sending him an invoice for $3,800, which he absolutely should do. And they're earning off of his free labor. That's pretty egregious to take his technical assessment and then flip it into an actual pay client's the site. So on my story, they did the same thing. I put together this entire hiring presentation, step by step, what I would do to scale up this particular business. They were a small startup that was kind of growing and scaling, and all the things that I would do from a branding perspective, like marketing, human resources, recruiting, talent acquisition strategies, etc. And they ended up hiring somebody else, but I started seeing some of the things that I was presenting implemented over time. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's what they're doing. So I mean, almost not as egregious as this, but pretty much the same damn thing. So moral of the story here, if you're being asked to do any assessment or live presentation of work, they like take home assignment, they want you to do some type of thing. There are some stipulations that you should have. The first thing is that it cannot solve an actual business problem. The second thing is, if you read the fine print and they say that this becomes the property of the organization, buyer beware. I would absolutely back out of the interview process if it had that stipulation. Of course, it looks like kind of like not scrupulous, but if you're questioning anything at all, make sure that you clarify this stuff with the recruitment teams and get it in writing. And if they say that it becomes company property, that's a big red flag. I would not complete the assignment. I would back out of the interview. And the final red flag is I wouldn't spend more than a couple of hours doing these. And usually the best ones are on site. They give you a case study, maybe a quick case study or something, or a problem to solve. They give you some time. The interviewer leaves the room. You work it up right then and there, and then you present it. I don't have a big issue with those. And if it's a senior level position where you're expected to create strategy, etc., I can see there being like a case study. But again, it can't solve their actual business problem. It needs to be a fictional type of scenario that's not directly related, because what they're going to do, they're going to take your ideas, even if they don't hire you. Maybe they like you, like you're like a silver medalist candidate. They like you enough, but then they take aspects of your work. They take a little of this, a little of that. They take the next candidate's a little of this, a little of that. Before you know it, they interview 3 or 4 really senior people who've got really good ideas. They can put together a pretty decent strategy themselves, and then they hire somebody potentially cheaper to execute the idea. And they've already kind of handed them a prepackaged solution. So feel bad for this guy. I would be just really careful if you see these types of things. You have to manage or know your value, manage your interview process like it's a business of one. Would you do this work for free? And that's the bottom line. Personally, I would not. Next up, we have this. These interview questions are just so silly, like literally silly, but also like just a ridiculous. Like, what does this tell you about a candidate? The sample writing of 250 words or less on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it's funny. It says like it's optional. What happens if you don't answer it? And what's a good answer? Are they looking for this? I guess we have to know what kind of job this is, and we don't know. But if it's a creative writing or an instructional writing, maybe they just want to see how like fluid your writing is and how to the point and how concise it is. But this is absolutely ridiculous. how to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and what do they actually learn about? And like, what's the cutoff if you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich the wrong way? Like, what's the criteria? I would love to know that. All right. So next up, we have this. Who's going to answer this question? Honestly, it's, there's a pull down in the candidate questions that is a required field. Are you a member of any terrorist or militant organization? Like, who's going to, if you're actually in a terrorist organization, are you going to actually make that selection and say, yeah, I'm in a terrorist organization? Like, this is an absolutely bizarre question. All right. So next up, we have a predictive health. Now, these are becoming more and more popular. These self-recorded applications where some cases there'll be like a one-way interview where you'll just, and it's being handled with AI a lot more often. I've actually had to do a few of these in my career, interview career as well, where you have to interview basically into the abyss. You hit the record button and you deliver some answer, and you don't know if anybody's reading it, if it's an AI that's assessing it, or what the case might be. But these 15 to 30 seconds, tell me about something difficult that you have done. Is, I would say, going through your ridiculous interview process. That's probably a difficult thing that I've done. This prediction health, I don't know what this company is, but they're asking you to basically do these short submissions. And I think that they're just terrible candidate experience, because these types of interview questions should be asked in an actual interview. It should be based off of your resume, how solid your resume is for the job posting. Let a recruiter recruit you, and then you have these questions in person. This is just not a good candidate experience, because you're asking these candidates to go and do all these unusual things that are uncomfortable. Like, let's face it, most people, myself included, even though I make a lot of YouTube videos, I'm not super comfortable making these video types of things, especially in these interview settings. And it's, a little nerve-wracking. And do you only get one chance to record your answer? Some of them, it's like, once you hit the record button, it's over. And if you say something stupid, I'd love to be on the other end, kind of checking out some of the answers, because you probably have people fumbling around, not even realizing that the thing is recording, and you probably get a whole bunch of weird stuff. All right, next up, we have a particularly long application processes. During this application, I agree to use only my own words. I understand that plagiarism, the use of AI or other generated content, will disqualify me from applications. Now, I do think we're going to see, because AI is so prolific in pretty much all aspects of our society, and people are using it for pretty much everything, I do think we're going to start seeing companies pushing back more. I was at a talent acquisition event last year. Some companies encouraged the use of AI. And in fact, if the job required you to use AI, they were expecting you to know how to leverage it. And so some of them, like, there was like some camp of companies that were like cool with it. And then there was another camp of companies that was trying to find ways for authenticity. So I think that they were looking for like authenticity, but using AI to augment and make it, more like maybe an organized thought, but the authenticity was a big part of it. And so there's more and more companies who are putting in these AI detectors. And if you have like an AI generated, like say a resume or a cover letter, or certainly interview answers, like those little interview services where they put the interview answer up on the screen, you're supposed to read it while you're having your interview, is like, just don't do that. Like, that's not an effective strategy. And it is, they're getting more sophisticated with being able to identify people who do that. And frankly, you're going to just sound very robotic when you do it anyway. But this is becoming more of a thing. I would expect this to continue, this trend of AI companies opting to not have people submit with AI. The ironic thing is they're probably using AI to filter this all out too. So it's like, it is really like a double standard, and it's not really fair for the job seeker. But it says, what tools for data analysis would you like to work on in the future, and why? Yeah, I guess, but then tell us about a time when changing attribution method led you to big implementation in big changes in your marketing strategy. This is a behavior-based question that they should be asking you in an interview. And I hate when they put these in the job application, because it's lazy recruiting to me. They're trying to get you to auto filter out. They're asking you to put all this time into these thoughtful answers Again, if you're unemployed and you're applying to a lot of jobs, you're probably applying to a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen jobs, and they're probably getting 1,000 people to apply for this. They're asking every single candidate to apply for that who applies to fill out these job applications, which are taking a lot of time. And they're likely auto filtering, auto rejecting you. Like there's nothing more deflating than going through an entire interview application process. You put these well thought out answers in. You're probably really thinking about what would make you stand out as a candidate. You spend all this time making this application, you hit the submit button, and then 30 minutes later, you get a rejection. Like that's not good candidate experience. Some of them actually, when you hit the submit button, they go through a filter. They already know almost instantly whether or not you're a candidate that's going to move forward. But then they put in a delay. They use like a 2-day delay, so that it doesn't look like you're being auto rejected immediately. And that's in a lot of cases that's what will happen. But you're spending all this time answering these behavior-based questions, like this most complex go-to-market motion you've ever had to analyze, and the chance of you actually moving forward in the interview process is very slim. But the application itself continues to get weird, where they're like really hyper focused on what kind of education you have. Like, what is your university degree result or expected result if you don't have not graduated? And then so it's like that's a fair question. Do you have a degree is probably a better question. It's just a simple do you have a degree, yes or no, if that's a kick out. But then they're asking for you to include the grading system to help us understand your results. So like they're like super hyper focused on a measurement system for your grading, and that's just weird. Like, why is the education grading system so important to them? Something just seems strange about it. Like somebody clearly has a bias in the interviewing process with education and says, we've hired outstanding individuals who did not have a university degree. Okay, so if you don't care that much about university degree, why are you trying to put in and understand their exact method of measurement? And it's like, this stuff is like it's just minutia, and especially if this is not an entry level job. It's bizarre to me. But it's not. That's not the end of it. They're also asking, how did you perform mathematics in school? How did you perform? There's an option I don't know. I guess I should say I don't know which kind of job this is. So, and I don't know which country this is located in. So, some countries may be more specific about this than others. But asking some of these questions just seems bizarre on a job application. So like, how did you perform your native language? So I'm assuming that this is probably a foreign application. And finally, this one's pretty funny. Like, okay, so there's this interaction between a recruiter apparently and a job candidate. So this recruiter, I guess there's some contact information, but the candidate says, hi, Simon. Unfortunately, I've decided to pursue other opportunities that don't require a pit stop at Starbucks on the way to the interview. So some interviewer, whether it's recruiter or hiring manager, asked this person to apparently stop by Starbucks on the way to the interview and get them a freaking drink. Imagine having the interviewer go like, hey, while you're at it, can you maybe stop and get me a latte on the way into the interview? It's just so random and bizarre. And so rightfully so, this person declines the offer and says, or declines the offer to interview, and says, best of luck finding a candidate with the right blend of skills and coffee running enthusiasm. So the recruiter then says, you should have told me that you weren't going to come to the job interview. You put me in a very bad position with the owner of the company. So I'm going to assume that this is a headhunter and not an internal recruiter, because he's now like trying to like save face with his client, this crappy business owner. I mean, no, like this recruiter should have pushed back on this. Like, come on, man. Making your candidates go through that kind of stuff is just ridiculous. And if I'm a headhunter and I have a client who is telling my candidates to stop by Starbucks, I'm firing them as a client. Not everybody is worth your time, and that's just not a good candidate experience. It's a bad reflection on the recruiter to the headhunter. So it says, you should have told me that. You put me in the very bad position with the owner, and that was very unprofessional. It's like, that was unprofessional, not the fact that he was asked to stop at Starbucks on the way home. The fact that he actually didn't show up to the interview or canceled the interview at the last minute, or that he wasn't going to come to the interview. Yeah. Like, no call, no showing the interview is one thing. You should have probably sent that message saying he's not coming. It looks like he probably sent this after he didn't show up. So I would agree with that that's unprofessional, but this is certainly unprofessional. So it's like, I think there's blame to be passed around all around here. Then the funny part here is that I don't know if he accidentally sent this to the same candidate, but he meant to send this to the hiring manager, but he actually redacts a lot of the message, and it says, "Hi, Simon. Unfortunately, I've decided to pursue other opportunities. Hi, Simon. I have unfortunately decided to pursue other opportunities." And he conveniently leaves out that don't require a pit stop at Starbucks. It says, "Best of luck." And then he obviously scrubs out the "best of luck finding the right candidate to run with with the right blend of skills and coffee running enthusiasm." And, nice sanitized professional message, even though he didn't show up for the interview. So who's in the wrong here? This candidate or the hiring manager? I'll let you guys decide. So that's it for the world's worst job applications and interview stories. If you have any really interesting ones that are particularly salacious, you can feel free to send them to me through my website. I love to check these ones out, and I can kind of keep a little folder. And once I collect enough, I'll try to do these occasionally. They're just fun. They're lighthearted. I don't take these very seriously, but it's just kind of to poke fun at the state of the job market, because it sucks out there, and these companies don't make it any easier. And, we can call them out. Hopefully a hiring manager or two will see these along the way and realize that they're being idiots and should change around their processes. So we'll continue to advocate it from a lighthearted perspective, and hopefully we can get the message out there. Anyway, if you're interested in more of these type of videos, check out my playlist. I've got a whole bunch more, and it's just kind of a fun way to waste a couple of hours of your life if you've got nothing better to do. Anyway, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.